Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Time to Calibrate podcast. Joining me today are our co-hosts Bob Allaby and Brent Robillard, and we have a special guest, Mike Pearson from Christopher Ward. How's everybody today?
Very good.
Excellent. I'm very well, thank you. It's wonderful to be on this, and like I said earlier, congrats on this pod. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate you being on with us. Let's get the wrist checks out of the way so we can get started. Mike, you're the guest of honor. What's on your wrist?
Sure. I've got my bronze Pro 300 Christopher Ward, obviously, on today. This is the first watch that really made me fall in love with the brand. Just over, I think, a couple of years ago now. Just seeing it when it first came out. I live in Texas. I'm English. I sweat because of this horrible place in some ways and the heat. So the patina is legit right now as well. So I've got a perfect place for me.
Any green stuff on there, or is it still just looking good?
The crown sometimes can look a little bit, but no, you give it a little rub down, that's grand. But the rest of it's just kind of looking like a dirty tan, and that's what I wanted. So yeah, no, it's perfect for me. When you get those bronze watches, it's always that unwrapping a fresh Easter egg or a really nice Christmas present, but then it changes to who you are, and this is very much me. So now I'm all in. This is great.
Have you had a chance to bring it to your salt water yet?
I took it to the beach, but I didn't want to go. I'm not that kind of person that would try and actively make it even more patinaed or have more oxidization. But like I say, me being as warm-blooded as I am and having skin made of rice paper in Texas, it's got enough naturally. So,
what about you guys?
Well, because we're trying to squeak this recording in under the wire as you're leaving on vacation, I chose the MIDO Ocean Star GMT, the special edition. It's a flyer GMT. It was released earlier this year. Sort of that vintage-inspired design. It's got a beautiful 11-row mesh bracelet, blue on blue colorway, dial and bezel. The blue is like almost a purple blue. It's quite nice. It's got a double dome sapphire crystal, lovely dial distortions and all that stuff. It's 40.5 millimeters in diameter, 200 meters of water resistance. But, the story with this one is really the price. Like Christopher Ward, actually, MIDO is one of those few Swiss-made brands still offering flyer GMTs for under $1,500. In fact, I believe it's identically priced to the C63 Sealander GMT, which, by the way, Mike, is also a very beautiful watch. Truth in advertising, it's not mine. MIDO sent it over. It's part of an article that I'm writing. And like I mentioned in the last episode, next week I'm headed to Montreal to cover the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. And MIDO's the key sponsor there. So yeah, that's what I've got on, a travel watch, even though I will not be jumping time zones.
Or dive boards.
No.
Yeah.
You can be sure of that one.
What about you, Bob?
So since I know we're going to be talking a little bit about the Toronto Timepiece Show here shortly, and Christopher Ward attending, I thought I'd wear another attendee's watch, Marathon. So I'm wearing the Steel Navigator today.
Oh yeah, that's a cool watch.
Good grab and go quartz. Finds its way onto my wrist pretty frequently. So yeah,
very, very cool. Well, in honor of our guest star, I've got the Christopher Ward C1 Moonglow on. It's in for loan from Christopher Ward. I should be writing a review of it shortly, and hopefully, if the Calibrated Wrist would like to host the article, maybe we'll have it there.
Absolutely,
beautiful watch, absolutely stunning. The lume treatment, especially on the moons, is just out of this world. Literally, it's spectacular, and the consort bracelet is really refined, much more refined than I thought it was going to be. It's nice and thin. It tapers down to 16 millimeters. No, it's a fantastic watch. If ever anybody's interested, hopefully they'll have a few at the Toronto Timepiece Show for people to see.
I'll have one of everything, hopefully.
Oh, fantastic. I'm actually really looking forward to see some of those Belcantos, and especially the 12X or 1210.
Yeah, absolutely. That new 12X titanium looks just fantastic.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a stir recently, didn't it, when it was released? But I think everybody who's seen it in the metal understands what it is. We've had such growth over the last few years, but that 12X, especially this year, it's our 20th anniversary. but it's also the 10th anniversary of us having the SH21, our own in-house movement. That we were the first British brand to have our own movement in 50 years. So when the 12X came out, there was a lot of people who only knew about that movement or that type of price point within Christopher Ward post Bel Canto launching. But that watches, or that model, and or not should we say the 12X, but that movement within certain models has been around in the collection for the longest time. But a lot of people didn't know. So it was a bit of a shock for some people's systems to see $4,800. But then when you understand what that movement is, what it does, how it looks, it's a bit of a machine for sure.
And how it's finished.
Oh my gosh, that's the star of, I think, a lot of Christopher Ward. When you talk about the consort bracelet with the watch you've got, or you pick up any of our Tridents or Sealanders and you see the light catcher case, it's just that little bit of extra that you would never expect for the type of price point you're paying. But the difference is the fact that we get a chance to, obviously sell a bit differently, and that transparency of pricing kind of comes through. So it's, in many ways, when I do these shows, or I've been doing this last year of just making sure people see it and hold it, it's, without sounding kind of preachy, but it's like a re-education of what $1,000 to $3,000 on average can feel like. Because when you go into a traditional retail store, usually that's what's entry level into mechanical. Whereas for us, that's everything. But we're not putting down any of the brands, but usually that entry level doesn't feel as refined as what a Christopher Ward does. So, $1,000 is a ton of money. So why shouldn't it feel good? That's kind of our mantra right now.
Absolutely.
I took a look at that C60 Trident Pro 300, the new one, and to me, it comes down to the details, and the color of blue alone just makes that watch really pop. Really, really beautiful release.
Well, it's also got that kind of element of that we've listened to the community. I mean, we are very much a community brand. I don't think we can ever be called microbrand anymore because of Bel Canto and changing the growth of and our whole outlook on where we want to grow. But what we have done and what we've remained to do and will continue to do is have the best watch for the money. But you'll know with anything, if you have a t-shirt printing business back home or you're making food, the more you make, sometimes the cost can come down. So what we can do with that cost saving is put it into the elements that make the watch stand out. So for example, on that watch, that light catcher case, we make it thinner, slimmer. There's a lot of detail in that case. The bezel is more refined. The movement upgraded to the SW330. So, it's a small things that sometimes can get missed because, again, there's more and more people coming to the collection all the time. But we can only do what we've done now through listening to the collector community who say, hey, we'd love it thinner. It doesn't need to be 600 meters. We want to see the movement. How about more detail in the case? Things like that. So that's where the pride of us within Christopher Ward, when we're talking about the brand. But I think it's also the surprise when you go to a meetup or you go to the Toronto Timepiece Show. A lot of people will pick up a watch and go, actually, it is good. It's not just a picture jumping off of Instagram.
It's beyond good. Really, honestly, it's the continuous improvement we've seen over the last 20 years. From using pins in the bracelets to screws to tapering the bracelets, the micro adjustments, the refinements. When Christopher Ward first started, their initial Trident releases were something like a cross between a Submariner and a Seamaster, right? It had some hands that wanted to somewhat look like a Mercedes hands, but then it had the wave dial and it had a traditional round case. And then you saw the evolution of the brand going until, I was going to say this a little further on, but I'll say it now. Everything really started to be propelled by the light catcher cases. And then it was the compressor case, and then it was the Bel Canto, which just launched you guys into stratosphere, and then it's been the 12 and the hits, and then one after the other, and the 12X. I wrote about that one on Worn and Wound when it was introduced, and I was thoroughly impressed. I got the press release days before it was announced, and I was sitting on this news, looking at these pictures, thinking to myself, holy cow, and I can't talk about this one anyone yet. So when I did put it out there and we saw the reaction of a lot of people who were like, what is this? Why is this so expensive? I think I went out and defended it on Instagram in a few places. And then Mike and I were talking in the background, saying like why people can't see. I mean, the nearest competitor to something like this would be the Oris ProPilot X or whatever, the X one, the one with that's all skeletonized, similar to what Christopher Ward does. But the level of finishing, the attention to detail, it's at a whole other level. And that Oris is about $2,000 or $3,000 more expensive.
Yeah, and again, with Oris's side of it, and with other brands that might have similar concept, they also have, deservedly so, they have to add certain monies onto it, because if you're in a retail store, there's a guy or a girl behind the counter who deservedly needs to be paid for, selling that through or explaining to a customer. There's also the duties that go into the countries and all the marketing that goes around it. That is all necessary. What we've done is obviously strip that back, and for 20 years, from the early watches all the way through to what you beautifully described, that business model has remained the same. So the idea was always going to be the watch that's as good as it can be and as attainable as possible for just about anybody's budget. When you start getting close to $5,000 though, you've got to make sure that there's an understanding of what's inside of that. And I think that because of our lack of retail, because we're not in a store, we can't have every day someone going into a store down on Broad Street or anywhere in those big cities across North America. There's no one telling the nuances or seeing the nuances. So you've got to rely on writings or podcasts. And that's sometimes hard. And we know that we've kind of got that disadvantage, but because of, events or with wonderful goodwill throughout the community and throughout people who write about us, that has helped people kind of self-police what, the naysayers might come into it. But I don't think any of us mind those conversations, because it helps us learn what people see about us, what they might understand or not quite get about Christopher Ward. I jumped into the comment sections as well. It was very much like, whoa, let's talk about it. Let's have a chat, instead of just going straight to that old school comments and having that off the hip kind of gun reaction. But for the most part, the more people that saw it and understood it, it's all calmed down. It's just going to be one of those watches that you like or you don't. Movement wise, it's grand. Not everybody wants to see it. Not everybody wants to have a watch that's all about the architecture of the movement. Some people just want a bigger watch with legibility. But that's the beauty of the industry. And I think that's what we are now catering to across the board from, the watch we released before the 12X was the Valor, which is our super quartz. It's got an ETA chronometer certified movement in there. But that was missed sometimes because the noise of what the 12X was doing. But we've got $650 to under $5,000 with an average price point of what, 1,400 US. It's pretty special.
Yeah, there's quite literally something for everyone at Christopher Ward. Whether you want ice cream dials, whether you want a professional diver, you want something dressy, something casual, you name it, it's all there. And now, honestly, with the availability of two different bracelets on I'm a bracelet guy. Make no doubts about it. I don't like MIDO straps. I said it. Come at me. I like bracelets. And the fact that there's two different bracelets that'll fit the same watch directly from Christopher Ward is really cool.
Yeah, and that's getting more refined all the time with micro adjust and tapering, as you say. I've always been a strap guy through my history and my career in watches, and I've always liked the straps. But when you throw on a good fitting bracelet, it's amazing how much it can suit you. And that was the case in point with the 12 titanium that I got when I first joined the brand. That is, we talk about the light catcher case being the star. For the 12, it's all about the integrated bracelet. And it's not just the fact that it's integrated, it's the fact that it sits and fits the way that a watch 3, 4, 5 times its price should fit and as you expect it to fit. So no, there's hidden surprises in a good way across the entire range, but we're always learning, always developing. So if any of your listeners out there that have got ideas, wants or needs, throw them our way. We'd love to hear it.
I love 100% the enthusiasm in your voice, Mike. And you know what? I feel like this morning that our enthusiasm has for watches in general and for Christopher Ward in particular has almost carried us away here. Some of our listeners may not know exactly who you are, Mike. So maybe, Mark, maybe you could give a bit of an introduction and then people will understand why we're so excited about this morning.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been a fan of Mike's work for... Well, I don't even want to say how many years because it's been a long time. I used to follow him on Twitter. Yeah, it's been a while. I started following Mike when he was at Bremont and posting a bunch of pictures of pilots in their jets wearing the watches, which led me to eventually buying a Supermarine 500, which I love dearly. Since then, he's traveled to Zodiac, where he was a brand ambassador and director there for a while. And it was, multiple releases, new products, a lot of fun, a lot of enthusiasm. His joy is extremely palpable, and it matches how I feel about the hobby, and it's great to see. And now that he's the brand director for Christopher Ward, I think that he's finally found a brand that can spread its wings as much as he wants it to spread. And I think that this future is really bright, and we're really looking forward to seeing where they go next. So Mike, can you tell us a bit about your journey and your career through all of this?
Wow. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm sorry for all of the social posts, but I'm glad we got a sale out of you for it.
Those pictures were amazing, honestly. Breitling can say what they want about being pilots and pilot watches and John Travolta and whatever you want, but seeing the watches on actual pilots sitting in the jet fighter, and as a kid who was in the Air Cadets for years, who flew gliders, who flew in an F-18, that spoke to me personally.
Oh, I love that. No, and I think that kind of goes to how I've always used my social media. I always try to celebrate the people who are wearing the watches, because you can have all of the wonderful ambassadors, but it's the people who put it in situations where maybe you could be in or see yourself to be in, but those pilots take you to another level. I mean, possibly all of us grew up in a time where Top Gun was the best movie of all time, but to see actually wearing the watch you work for was grand.
And Mike, you're on a call with people old enough to have seen that in the theater.
Amazing. We did it together, guys. Well done. But I've been in the industry, the watch industry, since 2000, officially I would say 2004. I was a very young lad at the time. I was in my mid-20s. Not to go too far back, I started in watches when I was working away on cruise ships. I was very young. I had a nasty car crash. I wanted to travel for 1 year, just because you had that second chance to live, and you felt very lucky. And this cruise ship life ended up being 5 years of my youth. And I started off within entertainment and ended up working for a company owned by LVMH. And they had a very small company called Onboard Media, who would promote what to buy ashore to all the people who are on board the cruise ships. They would have a TV channel. They would do a live presentation to up to 1,000 people. You would tell people where to buy their diamonds, where to get souvenirs if you want to get some rum cake. But also through that is where you find your watches. And if I'm really honest with myself and everybody, I hated selling anything but the watches. It was very much the romanticism of what they stood for. It was great seeing the different variations of people's tastes. At that point, I was probably still wearing a Fossil. And then it got me into, a Tag Heuer, Carrera, three-hander. And I was really into the stories. It wasn't the mechanics, shall we say. That is the mysticism of what I liked, because I wanted to learn on my journey. But those early days of understanding the stories, the nuances, why a guy from Idaho who, works outside would choose something as refined as a Rolex Submariner. But the history of it meant something to him. Or you could find a business guy that wanted to have something slim and thin, and it was fashionable like an Armani, but it suited his suits. And there was nothing wrong or right in between. And I thought that was quite beautiful. I ended up moving to America, to Michigan, which is why I'm excited for the Toronto show, because I'm going to be near home. But I moved there, and I ended up working for a brand called Ernst Benz. And Ernst Benz was a very small Swiss brand owned by an American family with Russian background. So they love their watches. And at the time when the industry was on its knees, it was 2008, we decided to launch. And I learned every good or bad habit through that time. And we made incredible business through that. But we also, at a time when we really shouldn't. And I learned all the good and the bad habits through it. But very quickly into that, my ambition started to grow, and people started to poke around, which is quite exciting. And at one point I was close to moving back to England with another brand, but it ended up being reading a magazine, Watch Time magazine, with Bremont on the front cover, that just made me go, wow, this suits me. A couple of British guys who want to bring British watchmaking back home. Maybe they need maybe they need a hand with a bit of advice. And I was never thinking about leading Ernst Benz at that point, but maybe I could help them with advice of getting into America. And in return, maybe they could help me get Ernst Benz into the UK. And that meeting, which was with Nick English, ended up being a very big moment in my life, because I ended up leaving Ernst Benz and telling Nick I'd give them 6 months, and ended up giving them almost a decade of my life. And whatever Bremont is doing now, at the time when we were growing, it was nothing but excitement. It was very much MB2s, dive watches, working with Jaguar, Boeing, the America's Cup, opening 60, 70 points of sale up around North America, including in Toronto, being one of the first places I'd opened a store. I love coming up there, and the Canadian market can sometimes get missed by some of these brands, but it was important to me that we had some good staple diets, that's good stores to help us. And so I learned a lot about North America, not just the US. But it ended up being a bit of a trade-off between my love of Bremont and having a bit more of a life that wasn't just watches. And I ended up meeting my now wife. And Nick will always say this, maybe not to him in public, but he was always like, he used to call me Billy. Billy Whiz was my nickname. He was like, Billy, you need to get your, you can tell by how I talk. He goes, Billy, you really need to get yourself a girl. Yeah, it's time, Billy. And as soon as I met my wife, I realized that I couldn't fit both in. I couldn't fit Bremont into my life. And I had to change that. So we changed it. And I left Bremont after almost a decade, which I'll be honest with you was one of the saddest moments of my life, because it was into the unknown. And I jumped into retail. Then I was picked up by another brand that wasn't quite right. So then we went back to Bremont, and you should never, this is advice to all the people out there who are young, never go back. No matter what you do, as much as you love it, never go back for a reason. And and not because of anything slighted to Bremont, but I was in a different place mentality-wise. And then who knew that a small pandemic hit the world, and Bremont wasn't ready to kind of, or wasn't able to kind of push us on into America the way that I wanted. And so we all kind of had to pivot and change. And I lost my love, if I'm really honest, with the watch industry. And I stepped back, went into tech, thinking that I'll just do normal stuff now. But whilst in tech, as COVID was happening, I was, again, poked and prodded by these smaller, quite exciting independent brands. And I also, for the first time, started to diversify my collections. So I would sell a couple of old Bremonts and pick up a Halios or a Vertex, or I would look into what people like Fears and Farah and some of these smaller Swiss brands or German brands were doing. And then they were asking for help and advice. And I had no idea or want that, because I was like, no, I don't want to watch it. I'm good. I did my 10 years. That's enough. But it ended up being a call from Zodiac. And they said, Mike, we know you're in Dallas. We see you've got one of our watches. Could you come and have a chat with us? We'd love to chat. And I said, well, actually, I'm now living in England, because after COVID, we'd moved to the UK after all these years in the US, and I can't do it, but I can consult. I'm doing it on the side for some brands. And that ended up being the best hour of my week to the best 2 hours of my week to the best 3 hours of my day. And they asked if we'd move back to the US. My wife is American. And I said, do you want to? She jumped at the chance because she loves England. It just wasn't quite for her in a post-COVID world. And my juices for telling stories were inflamed like I've never felt, because I felt like with Zodiac being as old as it was and had such an important part to play in dive history, that story was lost and missed. And so what I realized that my talents or my love for watches had been missing was a crux, a story, be it the English brothers or to now maybe retell and then readjust the thinking of what Zodiac could be and should be in the market. That for me could have been the next 30 years of my life. And we could very happily be sitting here doing this podcast about Zodiac. But as you may have alluded to, my energy levels and my ambitions seem to be really, really well matched with Christopher Ward and Mike France and Peter Ellis, who own the company. And so in a very weird happenstance way, this has now happened. And again, no idea of me wanting to do it, but when I saw Mike and Peter and the team work at the wind-up show, especially in the New York one, they had that right attitude about being part of a community. The way they would either empty the boxes with the team and then tear down the show, or show a watch or explain how to change a strap, small things, to as big as and as grand as the Bel Canto launching made that brand. I thought that they were creating a bit of magic, and I could help that over here. I didn't realize that Christopher Ward was probably the biggest market is North America, just by a couple of percent when you look at the UK market and the rest of the world. But I also didn't realize that they'd never really had any boots on the ground. And so what they needed was a little bit of tactility, a storyteller, someone who had some ideas and maybe a bit of experience. And the last 8 months might have been the most exciting of my watch career. Because everywhere I go, there's going to be, let's say we come up to Toronto and we did an event for 100 people. I know that probably 80% of watch people would have heard of it, but probably about 20% of the attendees would have held a watch, and probably just a few percent own it themselves. And so to go to any geographical location from Detroit to Raleigh, North Carolina, to San Francisco, and then obviously up to Toronto, it feels like it's the most organic way of growing a brand that I've ever felt, without having to do that normal stuff of finding the one retailer and have those months and months of endless negotiations. It's just a case of, I'll buy you a beer, have a look at our watches. What do you think? Do you have questions? And hey, let's try and find you the best watch that suits you. It is so true. It is so freeing. And it really is an exciting time in my life. And there's also a balance between, watches and my wife and family. So I've found, after all these years, a really lovely flow. And today, it all hangs on this podcast, obviously.
I've got a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
Really serious, very important question. Does your wife know that your name is Mike and not Billy?
She does know. A couple of my watches say Billy on the back, and it might have confused her. Billy Whiz was an old English comic book character in England from a comic called the Beano. And that's just what they could call me. It's hilarious. But yeah, that's stuck just with him, no one else.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the whole Zodiac relaunch or rebirth, if you want, when you started there and those stories really hit home for me, because back when I was a late teenager, early 20s, I started collecting watches, and I was really into, the Citizens, the Seikos, and the Casios, as one does when they start. And my aspirational watch at the time was a Tag Heuer, similar to you. But of course, being a student, couldn't afford it. And I stumbled on a store that sold Zodiac, and they had a formula model that looked just like the formula models from Tag Heuer, but were actually built a little better. The bracelets were solid. The bezel was actually steel and not plastic. And it was priced, I think it was like $300 or $400. And so I bought it, and I wore the poop out of that watch for a long time. So seeing the brand resurge with new Seawolves and Super Seawolves and the colors and the collaborations you did with various media outlets and Warren Wound with the laser tag and all that stuff. This was so much fun to watch.
Oh,
but again,
very fun. Really.
I felt that you needed something bigger and something that to really sink your teeth into. Yes, the history is fantastic with Zodiac and all that happy stuff, but Christopher Ward is just going places, and you're just the right guy for the job.
Well, I appreciate that. It was a weird moment when I announced, I did it just at New Year, that I'm leaving Zodiac, and I haven't got billions of followers. There's a really good core following of watch community people that follow me, but you could feel that, but you just got going. And then when I announced a few days later that it was Christopher Ward, you felt yeah.
This makes sense.
Yeah, it was. And then you've also got those people that would say, but I only knew you with Bremont, that was the British brand. And I'm like, well, this feels, what is lovely is that it's all kind of mattered at the right time of my particular life. And, my skill set has grown to where it is today. But the thing with Christopher Ward, compared to, say, Zodiac, that has all that history that they're trying to retell, which they should, because it's important, the first time watch, to Bremont having a history which was very genuine to Nick and Giles, but maybe misunderstood through all the different partnerships that they'd wanted to release. But it was a very genuine story to them. To Christopher Ward not saying anything else apart from, we're designed in England, we're made in Switzerland, we sell online, we're very transparent with pricing, and there's a 3 times markup from what it costs, so you're never going to be overcharged. We only sell this particular way. And then these are the models that in the beginning we've taken inspiration from, to a point today where the maturation process has got watches that only feel like Christopher Ward with nods to different styles, but it's not taking any designs anymore. It's basically just saying, this is us, this is who we are.
Yeah.
Come and have a look.
100%.
That for me is the genius of who they are, because there's no, Mike and Peter and obviously Chris at the beginning when they started, it wasn't about retelling a story or buying a brand name. It was just an idea of how to sell watches unlike anybody else. And that's been 20 years in the making, to a point where, yes, again, to your earlier point, we did great business. When Bel Canto came, we lit the house on fire. When the 12 was released a few months later, we poured petroleum all over the place again. But we're a different brand now to 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. But if you look at those watches from 5 years ago, we're in a different stratosphere. They are great. And those watches at those times that I've seen, and if anybody came to San Francisco Wind Up, you would have seen a backboard of 285 different models or different families over 20 years. But the different, I think, 7 stories that we tell today in a few different colors and sizes, it's clean, it's crisp, it's very targeted, and they know who they are. And that means for me, I'm not overselling or over talking. It's just maybe a guidance of what you might have seen on Instagram. And that's again, very, very exciting and fulfilling.
I think it's really important to people understand this 3 times pricing, because Mike said it, you said it, Mike France, I mean, and it's 3 times the cost, right? So whatever it costs times 3 is what the retail price is.
Yep. So if it costs us $300, you'll have a $900 watch. And this is US.
Exactly. But then all of the extra costs, your salary, the people in the UK, the website, the advertising, that's all included in that, 2/3 of the price, which is remarkable. And no one else, obviously there are a couple of, there are many other online direct to consumer brands, but there's nothing like this, not at this quality level, not at this price point, not, and if I understand correctly, like when you're looking at 12X or some of the other special models, the times 3 doesn't even factor. It's even less than that, because if you did times 3, the price would be way over what people would be willing to pay. I think you guys take a bit of a deduction on there to make those watches and those special pieces.
Yeah, we take a hit when it's right. And then if you look at the core collections of it all, and the hit's minimal, it's just to a point of keeping us within a place where we're comfortable talking about that story. Like for the 12X, it could be in US dollar just over $5,000, but that's a different bracket. So you do 48, 65, you're in the same conversation, but maybe more approachable price point for the community. Whereas if we're looking at Tridents and Sealanders, and now 12s, because we make quite a few different models, the more we make of them and the more the popularity grows, actually the price point in terms of how we make it ends up being lower. Again, it goes back to that making clothes or making cookies, the ingredients that you have, if you're buying more in bulk, the lesser the cost. But that means that we can then add that, save money into higher quality. We can do things on dials. We can do lume, which shouldn't be there. We do that light catcher case. So in the end, that 3 times X is very important to us as a mantra. But we can definitely try and do some savings in money on our side, or take a hit on our side. But in the end, that middle ground means the watch is the best that it can be. And even to the point where you're looking at this, you talk about Belcanto, that's based off a Celita jump hour movement, but the 62 parts on top of the platine, that's magic. Whereas, the romanticism of hearing and seeing the sound for another brand might be about, okay, we can now charge you $10,000 because of what it means. But for us, it's $4,200 because actually that's kind of what it should be, because of what we've put into it. Yes, the perceived value is important because it can grow the mystique, but it's not deserved, not in terms of how we sell and why we sell it. It's definitely not deserved in terms of what Mike and Peter want as a business model. So let's just keep it true. And that's why we are now talked about in those same circles where people could buy an MB&F up to an FP Journe or have incredible brands or models or complications, because the Belcanto does something that nobody else can. But it also is a price point which for those guys and girls go, well, it's my entry level watch, but they don't buy it for the money. They buy it because of what it represents in terms of watchmaking. And so if you can then translate that into, you and I, our types of salaries, or the collector community who might be saving up or having a collection that they might switch out from time to time, that now becomes an entry level grail. The only thing that we have to make sure of is that we grow with it. So yeah, I'm not sure if you saw when that watch came out, the blue one, it launched, with a picture and a prototype dial and a prototype case. It sold out within a couple of hours. That was 300 watches. And that was going to be a year's amount of stock for a brand like Christopher Ward. We had no idea that it would sell out that quickly. So Mike, in his wisdom, said, well, we had this green idea. Let's show the drawing of it. And the next day that sold out in 15 minutes. 2 years of stock in 2 days. Now you've got to build them. And then we also had ambition to add the colors. So at one point there was a 17-month wait list for Belcanto. And that's only because we would not bend on the quality. And what we had to do is then go to Switzerland, go to our partners and say, we've got this little bit of a moment. You're on board. Let's go. Let's add thrusters. Let's add rocket boosters to the brands and really make sure we can do this. And everybody, to our credit, to their credit, to Jörg Senior, who is our CEO in Switzerland, and his son Jörg Junior, and all of that team, with the guidance of Mike in England, we've got to a point where now by the end of the year, we won't have a wait list, hopefully, with Belcantos. We will have fulfilled all of the back orders. And that means we've got freedom to go, what's next? let's do it again. So the maturation is not just in the watches, but Belcanto gave us the ability to grow up within ourselves as well and grow the infrastructure. Because no matter what industry you're in, if you can't get the supply chain right, you don't have a business. And we've got there now to a point where we can go to the next stage.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's give me goosebumps a little bit there.
My first question was, why is there such a wait? How can I translate this to the US and Canadian customers about why this wait is so long? And I said, I want to go see it. And so York Senior gave me a tour across all of BLBN, from the atelier, which is just behind the swatch factory, to all of our suppliers. I was going to places with, they were polishing us the same place that you would find with very high-end brands, Hermes, for example, or Gerard Genta's Style, all that kind of stuff. But then after that, I would go to places making parts the same as Audemars. And you're like, well, how is Christopher Ward here? Well, it's deserved. The parts that we make, they all cost similar. We're not scrimping and saving at any point in our development, even to the point where we've invested a great amount of cash into our own CNC machine, which is a place which would make space materials or medical materials, but we've got that CNC machines dedicated to casing and different parts. So, it's a very, very exciting time infrastructurally, but in the end, we want to build things that look cool and are priced right. So yeah, it's really grand.
Very cool. Now, we've noticed that collaborations have been playing a big part with Christopher Ward lately, with the Scottish Watches collaborations, the collaborations with Andrew Morgan, and some others. I'm curious, is everything in the collection available to be a limited edition or a special collaboration project? Like if we eventually have listeners, starting off, and we wanted to have a special 12X model with the Canadian flag somewhere on there, whatever. Is that something that's possible? Can people do that? Or is it just the C63s or?
No, absolutely. The whole brand is available for our bespoke part of our business. We have a very, very large part of our company which is dedicated only to bespoke. Andrew Morgan and Scottish Watches, that's a bit different because it was more of, they are the voices of the people in many ways. And Scottish Watches is the biggest podcast in the world for watches. Andrew Morgan with his Talking Hands and then into Watch Clicker, now to doing what he's doing. He was a really wonderful, dry, humor-filled, knowledge-filled voice that helped kind of alleviate any naysayers of what the Belcanto was at the time or what the collection was doing. He really knew how to kind of hold our story, tell it his way, and it resonated. So when he went on his own, and then obviously with Scottish Watches growing as they were, it was a no-brainer to say, right, let's do a watch with you. We'll give you a bit of the profits. That's the only way of saying, because we don't pay for influence, we don't pay for writings, we don't really have much in terms of that marketing ideals. It's just, if you love the watch, write about it, let's grow organically. But they were big players and very important. So to give them a little bit back for what they've done made sense. For the bespoke side of it though, and for your question, for your group in particular, if you've got 25 guys and girls with the same idea, we will make you, or we would attempt to make you a Christopher Ward within your image. All we ask though is that it's not one of those ones where I've got an idea, boom, we'll throw it out online. And we've had that in the past and it was great and it helped us. What we want is it to be like closed doors. So you have an idea, you'll talk to our bespoke team. We'll come up with a design and a plan. You share it amongst your followers or your listeners. And then what we do is we open up part of our website for a small amount of time. Let's say we give you a week or two, and then all the orders come in then. And then when the orders are done, we close it down and we make that for you. But the minimum is only 25 pieces. But if you wanted something as complicated as the X or the Belcanto, that's fine. What we find right now is it's Trident, Sealanders, and the 12s that are really, really popular right now. But it's all a conversation. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, there's nothing that's going to offend us. It's just a design that we could help you with. But no, it's a massive part of our business. And you guys pay the same amount of what we would do. So for 12 in steel in US dollars is $12.95. If there's nothing in terms of extra research and development, if there's nothing in terms of extra build, you'll pay exactly the same as retail price. So it's very exciting in terms of a process. And probably
that's very cool. I didn't know that.
And probably the most exciting part of that bespoke side is what I'm doing next week. We're just here right now towards the middle of August. At the end of August, I'm going to Reno, Nevada for Tailhook, which is the world or the America's biggest naval aviation get together. Over 4,000 pilots will be there. And we will be there shoulder to shoulder with IWC and Breitling and a couple of other brands, showcasing what we do within the military. And we know that type of show and that type of audience, because we've already done a lot of watches in the past, they want to have watches with us. And all those other brands that I just mentioned, the price point is very different to what Christopher Ward is. So if we can do some of those, what we said earlier, Mark, by putting some of those watches on pilots' wrists and seeing it in the cockpit in places that just make you feel, like a kid again watching Top Gun, man, that's just the most exciting part of our business.
And honestly, if you've got Christopher Ward watches displayed right next to IWC, next to the layman, I'm not talking to someone who's going to look at an IWC in-house movement versus an ETA or Salida or whatever, but to the layman, paneling the watches, Christopher Ward's going to look very favorable right there, especially at the price point.
Price for sure. And it's also going to be the shiny new penny in there, but we've had some really big wins with the military. I'm sitting here in front of you, in front of me right now. I can't show you obviously, but we've got these wonderful military dials and case backs, and just the Ministry of Defense collection that we did in terms of all those watches have been grand. But I have in front of me military collections that we've already put together, and I'm taking them to Reno, and I'm just filing them right now and putting them in a place where I know where they are and how to talk about them. But even to the point of, on social media a couple of years ago, we saw, or someone pointed out to us, a shout out to Watches of Espionage on Instagram, General Austin Miller wearing the Christopher Ward Trident. And Austin Miller, or General Miller, was part of Delta Force. He led Delta Force when everything was going off for the US back in the early 2000s. But then he ended up leading NATO as well. And he was caught wearing a Christopher Ward. They posted that. Watches of Espionage posted that, and the whole military community went, who the hell are you, and why has he got the watch? And none of our team, and this is not a slight on the team, none of us could get a hold of him. But obviously, as you said, I've been working with military squadrons in the past, and through connections, I managed to meet him and chat to him. And he might actually be coming to Reno with us to kind of show his watch and talk about what the watch means to him as well. So it's those types of personality that organically get the watch away from pushing it, and then you just celebrate them and say thank you, and let's see where it goes. But I can't tell you how much that means to me that he trusts us and that he's coming along with us. So
yeah, so sketcy guys wear Breitlings, nice guys wear Christopher Ward. So we've got that.
Hey, if you follow the sketchy boys on Instagram, you got to change that statement. As you guys know, there's another podcast that recently stopped. It was Rico's Watch Podcast, and Eric is he's a Canadian guy, and he actually works within the services, and so he, alongside some American, I got an Army guy and a Navy guy. And then we've got a couple of British guys as well. They started the Sketchy Boys, and they are celebrating watches within the military as well. So there's all these things that seem to be swirling around Christopher Ward right now, and it all comes from the fact that we do bespoke watches. So yeah, your question is very telling and very pertinent right now. So thank you.
So what you're telling us is that there are other podcasts than ours and the Scottish Watches.
Yeah, there is a couple more I've heard.
A couple more.
Yeah.
Wow, it's news to us.
But they might not be as good or as Canadian focused. So.
Oh, there you go. All right, I've dominated enough questions. I'll leave Bob and Robbie, I think, have questions for you as well. I'll let you guys go for it.
Yeah, so Bob here, Mike. Good meeting you. This is the first time chatting. But one thing that you actually touched on, you mentioned, you called CW Christopher Ward a community brand. And yeah, I've spoken with many different people from Christopher Ward. Everybody always seems so approachable, and you guys are out there at shows and events all the time. Just wondering if you could comment a little more on how important that is to you and the brand to be so connected to the watch community in that way.
Well, it's everything. And thanks for the question, because without the community and us being communicative with them, we don't have the brand. Because, when I do traditional brand selling, I would go into a store, give them the collection, do the training, and then it's those 10, 20, 30 people that, they take up the mantra. They then, all the customers come through the door. This is blah, blah brand. Let me tell you the story. Let me show you the movements. Here's the price. Give me a credit card. We don't have that. So the community, they take on that ownership of the brand. And we knew this many, many years ago. We have a forum, and it was started by a guy, or a few different guys, but the guy leading it now called Kip. and he's up there in Massachusetts, and we ended up buying the forum and putting it on Christopher Ward's website. We do not do anything apart from own the domain and get watches to people like Kip to see them, to talk about them. And they can say, if they hate it, they can say they hate it. If they don't understand something, they can put it out there. We have no control or say. We do not edit anything that they want. It's their forum. But from that, we've also got the Christopher Ward Watch Enthusiast on Facebook, the Christopher Ward Aficionados on Facebook. I then jump into Reddit and Watch Crunch and take away, you know, what's going on different forums from the past, like Time Zone, or what's still going with all the ones that are still out there. And then if you then look deeper, you know, podcasts like yours have people like yourself that might go to Red Bars or splinter groups of Red Bars. Like they are guiding everything that we do. And my whole mantra for starting this is kind of based off of what I see Christopher Ward feel like within the community. So my itinerary this year will be 40 different events across North America. This, as of right now, I've done 27 of them. And every single event will bring in 75 to 200 people. And I only cap it at certain places just because of time and manpower. It's just me here right now. But every event that we go to, I will see people with watches on their wrists from certain parts of Christopher Ward bring in friends who want to see what the new collection looks like, and they want to come on this journey. Nothing matters without the community. What I will say to kind of caveat that is that we're not perfect. You know, as the brand's grown, customer services have changed. Different expectations from different level of customer coming in have meant that we've had to grow up. But that also means that they will look online, they will look at certain things that weren't great, and that could sometimes lead them to go, oh, should I trust it? Do I know it? What we have to do is keep up with that, be better all the time. And, you know, I jump into the comment section, like I said earlier, because if I don't hear and show that there is somebody there, those conversations can genuinely and rightly go on a tangent. It's like going, you know, back in the day, you know, you see your parents looking over the garden fence, talking to the neighbor, and gossip starts that way, right? Or hearsay starts that way. We want to cut that off. We want to make sure that if there's a problem, let's fix it. If something has come up from the past that's not been dealt with, we own it, but let's make it right. I mean, watches can break, but it's not about that. It's about how you look after them. You know, you can drive out of a Porsche dealership and the engine can flop, but it depends on how they look after you there. And we really want to make that right. And that's the community guiding us as well. So the sales, yes, but it's also making sure we keep those customers. And that for me and for everybody in Christopher Ward is about customer service.
Very good. So I was just one other little kind of easier question. The catalog is obviously very deep, and there's some models that are out in the forefront, like the 12, the Trident, some of the more popular ones. I kind of gravitate to toolier watches, like your military line you were talking about, the Sandhurst, the Cranwell. I'm curious if you have a personal favorite model from Christopher Ward, maybe a go-to for you.
You have to answer that with which one of your children is your favorite?
Oh, I can't do it with my kids because they're at the door listening. I know that. No, but yeah, the watch I'm wearing today, the 42mm bronze Trident, is a tool watch as it comes. I mean, it's 42mm. It's got a great cylinder move. It's chronometer certified. It's a little bit rough around the edges. That suits how I dress. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now. You know, I'm not suited and booted as much as I used to be. You know, I am me, you know, you get your own style. But the 12, it suits everything when you stick on a jacket. It sticks on jeans and a t-shirt. And I think if I was going to gravitate to the one watch that I would wear that I think could wear every day, I would jump on that 12 titanium that I own. I think when it looks at the Belcanto, when I look at the 12X, when I look at even the Moon Phase and the Moon Glow, they are all either our own module and then our own movement. I think that I've got great watches, and I'm very lucky with the collection that I've got. I look at them as that is a different level of what I think I want my persona to project. So when I'm going out to an event, I don't want to wear the one watch you have to wait 5 months for, which is the Christopher Ward Belcanto right now, or the 12X is coming out in November. What looks good on me that suits you guys and girls out there when you come to an event? I think if you look at the Trident and you look at the 12, you've got just about everything. So yeah, I had the military collection on this week because I'm building up to talk about Tailhug. but they're all based off of that light catchy case. They've all got that dive style or the bigger crown, that kind of nod to the past. But I still come back to my Trident, and I think that's what suits me.
Awesome. I think Brent might have a couple of questions for you too here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. Mark outlined it earlier, and you yourself have recounted. You've worked with some very special brands, all of which have been successful in their own right. What I wonder is, was there any commonality between their ethos, do you think, that contributed to that collective success, or was it something particular in each case?
Oh, beautiful. All of it, every single brand in the beginning, Ernst Benz, through to Bremont and to Zodiac, and also the companies in between. I felt at that time it suited me and my what I needed, because this is before my wife and family, you have a selfishness about you, because not in a nasty way, you're not there selfish in terms of your attitude. It's more about, well, I've got to do this for me to grow as a person, and I know what I could add. I think what I've got to this point now within Christopher Ward, it's like all of those, that first meeting with Nick, or that first step into the watch industry with Ernst Benz, or, re-bringing back Zodiac with the team there, they all mattered. But I think when you look at Christopher Ward, in terms of where I am today, the gaps were glaring, because they are so successful and so popular and so powerful. All they needed was a little bit of, they just needed a face. They needed tactility. They needed someone who would put the miles in. And I think at this stage in my life and career, all of it and all of them have been the right place at the right time. This feels a little bit more special, because even though we're as big as we are, we don't hold a candle in terms of size to the other brands, but we, believe it or not, have creeped into the top 60 most desired brands in the world, which we've seen through different censuses and surveys. That's a big thing. But we're not trying to chase Omega, Breitling, or Rolex. But we do want to be in those conversations where we deserve it to be in the watch box of people who collect those types of watches. That is grand, because you can have those Halios, Vertex, Fiat, Farah, Seiko, Citizen, Fossil. Then you get into that entry level of, what's next? Do you want to have a swatch or a group watch? For me, I just love the fact that we can cross over into craziness with like Jean or MB&F, or be in a room with Rolexes and Pateks and still have a conversation that matters. So this feels so exciting. And I think at the end of the day, I know that I talk, as you've seen in this podcast, at a certain level of enthusiasm. I can't do that with everything. And that's been proven in the past. Like to myself, my dad always said you could sell ice to the Inuits. And I'm like, actually, I could only do that if I really cared about ice. I don't think I do, but I love watches. The big thing for me is just, I really got to care. And we sit here right now. I just had a meeting, as you guys know, before this podcast recorded, about our showroom that's going to open in Texas in 1 month, in the middle of September. That is not going to be the head office in America. That's the first showroom. And that will mean that I can then look at certain geographical areas in America. Maybe we could look at Ontario, or we could look at British Columbia, some of the middle territory.
Quebec. Quebec.
Yeah. We could look at that one. Gotta get my Duolingo out and start French sessions. But I think for me to be able to look at them as a possibility, those cities, those states, the possibility. Oh my God, it's so exciting.
Well, this really goes into my last question, actually. Back in 2021, I wrote an article. It was called 5 Watchmakers Changing the Face of Microbrands. And Christopher Ward was among those 5. And in fact, at that time, Mike France was really helpful in providing me with material for the article, etc. But just recently, I was putting together a profile for the Toronto Timepiece Show, where Mike talked about Project 100, where Christopher Ward would attain £100 million in revenue by 2028. Now, obviously, you said it yourself, the term microbrand no longer applies. You've made your own movements. You've won international awards. You're opening an exclusive showroom in Texas. It appears like the sky's the limit. So what is next? What's the next challenge or goal for Christopher Ward?
Well, we're all going to be working toward that figure. And we know we're not money driven, but we are very much ambitious in terms of a company that's led by Mike and Peter. And I think that this first showroom here, the new head office in Maidenhead, which is 5 times the size of where we are right now, the infrastructure in Switzerland, all of that is totally encompassing what this next year is. I mean, I look at my wall whilst I'm talking to you, which is a calendar. It's a year-long calendar, and I just cannot believe what I, as one person, have done. But if you think that over 100 people work for Christopher Ward, and we've all got calendars on our own walls that look exactly like mine. So we we can talk about, individual goals. We can talk about collective goals, which obviously has Project 100 in mind. But I think what we will all have as one unit or as one family is the next event, the next launch. We just launched the Trident 300 GMT. That was a huge effort for us all to get out, and it's been universally loved. On August 29th, we are launching a brand new dive watch, which will change Christopher Ward, in my eyes, again, in terms of perception, because of how great, and I say this with no ego, I say this as a watch person that would be on your side of the podcast. It's phenomenal. And it's going to change and turn a lot of people's heads. And then you look at what's coming in terms of releases that could, complement what our technical ability can build with Belcanto-like watches. And I know what the next 3 years are on that side. Then, personally, adding this showroom, making it hopefully a success, filling those appointment schedules, because it's always going to be an appointment-based experience. When you get your hour, you can come and see anything you like. It's yours. Coffee and cocktail, we'll have the team there. But if I can get that going and I can build one, let's say it could be Arizona or Colorado, or let's look at Illinois or Georgia, one of those states, or that would then lead me to think, maybe we're ready for the East Coast. Maybe we could look at New York adjacent. Maybe we could look at somewhere in California, because you have a different conversation. Then you look at, up to the Great White North and think, can we get there and give the Canadians what they deserve and what we think we can offer them? So the sky's the limit in every single department. But all we want as a collective is to get better. And the watches are always going to be the star, and the community is always going to be our focus.
That sounds like a very busy schedule, and definitely an intriguing one when you mention releases and next events.
Oh my gosh.
But when we're talking about next events, I think Mark has a few things he might like to finish up with here, particularly about the Toronto Timepiece Show.
Yeah, a lot of really nice words were just said, but I focused on August 29th new dive watch. I'm very excited about this right now. The way you described it. Yeah. Will you have that at the Toronto Timepiece Show in September?
I've got it in my hand right now, Mark. I'm trying to transmit it to the medium of ESP to your brain. It's we will have a few different variations of color in this particular model, and we will have them all with us in Canada.
Oh, I'm going to be hitting you up on Instagram later on.
Got very bad cell service here in Texas today. It's too hot.
It's not that much cooler here. Let me tell you, it's like 30 something degrees Celsius here, and melting on my microphone. Yeah. So talking about the Timepiece Show, what does that represent for CW? And I understand you guys are a platinum sponsor of this inaugural event.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the whole thing and coming to Canada for the first time?
Well, our whole year for North America, take away Canada, North America was only ever wind up. We have Chicago, San Francisco, and New York. They were our three things that we could legitimately, before I joined, we could look after. We would fly all the staff over, like 5-6 of them. We would fly all the stock over and sell there. When I joined, what I said is, we're an online business. Don't kill yourself by doing that. We don't need the watches at these shows. We just need the people to hold them. We need to be in geographical areas where nobody has ever held them before. Or at least if they have, let's show them the new stuff in a way. And then at these particular events, especially at Wind Up, we would then maybe offer certain price reductions, or we'd help out in certain duties or certain tax situations. We would try in any way to make sure that it was worthwhile to come. And so when I'm looking at these shows in between, where I do Red Bar Cruise, or I would do offshoots of watch collector community groups, I purposely went to places that we've never been, went to places that usually sometimes get left out, or certain watch groups that might not get the attention they deserve. But it was always looking at Canada as if we were going to do this, let's do it right. And out of nowhere, the Toronto Watch Show came up, and I met the organizer whilst I did an event in DC. And I'd spoken to him last year when I was still with Zodiac about it. And the excitement from him was, again, like you've wonderfully said about me, it was palpable, because he knows that the Canadian community, you guys get hit with taxes and duties like no other country that I can see in this developed world. And sometimes the trepidation, no matter what we put into place, such as a 60-day money-back guarantee or a 60-month warranty, sometimes you just need to hold it and feel it and know that it's going to be right to buy it, because you want to. Canadians are careful, considerate. great collector community, but you don't rush into things because you sometimes get stung with some of these things that are beyond the brand's control. So when we looked at the Canadian Toronto Watch Show, we're going to come out with a big group. There's going to be about 5 of us there. We're going to bring every single watch in the collection, and we will also have the ability at the show to swipe a card. We will still ship the watch, but we're going to try and help you out in a little bit of some breaks to kind of make sure those duties don't hurt as much as sometimes they can. There's some things that are missed as well when you look online, or you look through some of the boards or the websites or the forums, is that duties are sometimes so uncontrollable because you don't know what DHL, FedEx, UPS might charge a Canadian customer. Everything we have is DDP. You know what your duties are up front. And what we want to do face to face by going to these show or to going into Canada is we want everybody to feel comfortable that that's not a Christopher Ward thing or a brand thing. And also, if we did start to distribute within Canada, those duties automatically go onto the retail price of the watch as well. So I think a lot of the reasons why we want Canada to be a success is that there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of sometimes genuine frustrations. And there's also, I think, again, it goes back to the way the Canadians buy, is they want to hold it, feel it, and legitimately feel that they're buying into something that's special. And so that's what that show will give to us. And around it as well, I'm going to do a couple of red bars. I'm going to go to Montreal. I'm coming up there on the 25th of September. So if you are not a member of Red Bar Montreal, go on Instagram, find them, send them a message. On the 26th, I'm going to do an event with the Toronto Red Bar chapter. And then on the 27th, we set up, 28th, 29th, we go to the Toronto Watch Show, which is in the Courtyard Marriott, right there in the center of downtown. And we are going to have, I think, the best show of the year, because I think Canadians have been for too long starved of attention from brands like us and all the brands that will be part of the Toronto Watch Show. And what's exciting is that the organization group of Toronto will then go into Vancouver in April next year for the Vancouver Watch Show. And I think that is the start of something really special for your country.
Yeah, Jason is a fantastic guy. He's a personal friend of all of us. And, we've been silently helping him, on Instagram and promoting and talking to him with brands and introducing him to people. And we're really, really excited about this show and the one in Vancouver, and hopefully at some point in Montreal.
On, let's do it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I think Christopher Ward really kind of opened the floodgates for the show when it comes to other brands coming on board. You guys came on early, and it helped to give some legitimacy to the show. And I know that even Jason says it was a huge boost for the show. So I know.
Yeah, Jason said that to us, and I think Jason's, he's very honest with how he talks, which is the measure of the man. But he saw when I first started, the first big event I did was the District Time Show in Washington, D.C. Again, and it's the capital of America, and they never have watch shows. And I said last minute we'd go, and we had people waiting in line for an hour to look at a bel canto because no one had ever seen one. Now, as the years gone on, we've developed our space, our booth. We know how to bring enough staff to kind of make sure that doesn't happen again. But even Jason looked at that and went, if they can do that here, what could they bring within Toronto? And he's helped us massively, and he's really supported us in our desire to be a bigger part in Vancouver as well. And we want to do things right. I mean, we come with a really great collection, a very varied collection. And what myself and the events manager Olivia do is we have some lovely back and forth conversations, so we say, about how to set up these tables. But what we're doing is giving every part of our table or our booth a chance to see the full immersive collection of each Trident Steelander 12 collection. So you don't just see one or two colors or one or two sizes. We're going to try and bring everything so you can get a full feel of the brand. And we're excited to bring it to Canada.
Oh, we're excited too. We can't wait.
Oh, yeah.
To close off the show, and thank you so much, Mike, for being a part of it. I've got a selfish question.
Sure.
I'm going on vacation, leaving tomorrow for Greece for 2 weeks, and I only want to bring one watch. And my choices are my Grand Seiko SBG 557 Sport GMT or my Hamilton Khaki Expedition. Now, the Grand Seiko is very special to me. It was my 50th birthday gift from my wife. There's a lot of sentimental value attached to it. It's also much higher value, more expensive. We're going to be doing some hiking, some beaches, pools, a lot of eating. So, I'm weary of using that one. But then again, it's a travel watch. It's got the GMT function. I'll be able to use time, change the time without upsetting the timekeeping. Whereas the khaki, the Hamilton, is obviously much less expensive, a little less dear, so I can be a little more rough with it. And if something happens, I won't be so upset about it. But I'm completely torn. I've been flip-flopping from one to the other for a week now, and it's driving me absolutely crazy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you jump in first, yeah.
I'm fully in camp both. I always like to bring multiple watches when I go away. Although I will say, this is what I will say. The Hammy's the smart play if you are bringing one, but the GS is the fun play. So, it's a tough call. That's why
you're no help me
whatsoever.
I'm going to go into my heart. I'm going to go into my mind. I completely agree. I'm terrible at bringing just one watch. There's always a couple, but your GS, as beautiful as it is to you and as sentimental to you, the beauty of the GS is that I think the majority of people sometimes might not know what it is, especially if you bring about 4 or 5 different straps with you. I'm a big strap monster with those different, that type of watch. GMT is the only complication that matters, in my opinion. I'm a big believer that chronographs are great, but I just like the fact that they work. But my advice would be, wear the watch that's going to suit what you're doing. In Greece, and are you in mainland or are you on an island?
We're going to be in Crete, all the way at the bottom.
Yeah. You're going to be there with a really cool linen shirt, a nice pair of shorts, wear some, you're going to have a tan. Just take your Grand Seiko and wear the hell out of it, because it's the watch that you wore for memory, so build more memory. And if you want to wear it...
I'm half Irish, so...
Oh, yeah.
Tanning,
like mine.
Exactly.
I'd also suggest, though, we sent you that moon glow for you to review. There's no, if it's insured, get out there and enjoy it. Take the Christopher Ward and take us some shots. Be part of the promo team, for God's sake. You're going to be there with a feta salad, having the best food of your life. I want to see that.
I just might.
I'm definitely in camp Mike here. I really think you should take the GS, and the reason is because the word memory popped up and when Mike was giving you his 2 cents, and I think that watch means a lot to you already, and you want to infuse that with all the stories of your life. And ultimately, a watch is a watch; it's meant to be worn. So I'd go for the Grand Seiko.
And also, I agree with that. That needs to be seen underneath the Greek sunshine, not the Canadian cloud. So, get some good pictures of that.
Exactly.
I agree. It is one that I'm trying to tie in memories, and it is meant to be worn. I agree. I'm still undecided, but I am leaning towards the Grand Seiko.
Take them both and take some straps. Don't worry about it.
I am not a strap guy.
This makes our conversation difficult, but take the GS. I got to say, guys, this has been such an enlightening chat, and your questions have been brilliant. Thank you for wanting to talk about Christopher Ward, but more than anything, congratulations on this podcast. I know that this is going to be a success for you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mike, this morning.
Really looking forward to seeing you in Toronto here in September. So thanks for coming on.
No, there's going to be a beer on me for you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one. See ya.